My boss fired me after 15 years of loyal service. Not with a warning, not with a thank you. Just a cold, quiet email at 8:03 a.m., effective immediately, your employment is terminated. But here's the thing, I knew it was coming. I had planned for it. And what they didn't know was that I had spent the past year setting everything up. The moment that email hit my inbox, I smiled. Because that was the moment my plan began. I stood up, turned off my work laptop for the last time, and left the office with nothing but my jacket and the calmest expression on my face. I passed co-workers who looked shocked, some who were pretending not to notice, and a few who wouldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't care. Because I knew what they didn't. And now, I was finally free to start the countdown. So how did it get to this point? Why would a boss fire someone who had built entire systems for the company, someone who worked weekends without being asked, and someone who never took a single sick day? Let me take you back to the start of everything. Back when I still believed in loyalty. Back when I thought kindness would be returned in kind. My name's Eric. I started working for North Edge Solutions right out of college. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills, and over time, I came to love it. The people were great back then. It felt like a family. We celebrated birthdays in the break room with cake. We went out after work for drinks. The CEO even knew my name back then. I worked in IT, managing data security and digital infrastructure. I was the guy they called when the server crashed or when someone clicked a phishing link. And I loved solving problems. I got promoted 3 times in my first 5 years, and soon I was managing a whole department. Then things changed. The company brought in a new executive team. They wore expensive suits and brought colder energy with them. Gone were the break room cakes and friendly emails. Everything became about numbers, efficiency, and cutting the fat. At first, I thought I was safe. I worked hard, never complained, and even saved the company from a cyber attack once. But that was the beginning of the end. After that, people started treating me differently. I was seen as a threat. My direct boss, Jonathan, was a numbers guy. No personality, no heart. He didn't care that I trained half his team or that I'd mentored interns who later became full-time employees. To him, I was just a salary number on a spreadsheet. And my salary was pretty high after 15 years. That's when I noticed small things changing. My emails weren't being answered. Meetings were happening without me. They assigned me tasks that didn't match my role. I started documenting everything. One Friday, a coworker named Lisa quietly warned me. She said, "Eric, they're planning something. Be ready." That weekend, I didn't rest. I started copying over personal files, clearing my desk little by little. I backed up all my work and deleted everything off my personal cloud. I had a feeling the end was coming. And then, on a rainy Wednesday morning, it happened. That 8:03 a.m. email. No thank you. No explanation. Just terminated. I sat there for 10 minutes, staring at the screen. Then I laughed. Because I wasn't sad or surprised. I was excited. The trap had been set. They had no idea what they just triggered. 2 months earlier, I had discovered something. And that discovery would change everything. But we'll get to that. I walked to my car, got in, and instead of going home, I drove to a small cafe near my apartment. I opened my personal laptop, logged into a private server, and began the process. Everything I needed was already there. Records, emails, contracts, and something else, something they didn't know I had. As I sipped my coffee, I saw an email come in from Lisa. "Are you okay?" it read. I smiled. I wrote back one sentence. "It's time." But the story doesn't end here. Because what I did next made headlines. And it all started with one quiet meeting I had 6 months before my firing, with a stranger who knew just how corrupt North Edge Solutions really was. The room was silent as I walked out of the office, the weight of the envelope still in my hands. It was all so clean, so sudden. One minute I was part of the furniture, the next, I was being escorted out like I was some kind of criminal. But what they didn't know was that I had been preparing for this exact moment for the past year. It all started 14 months ago. I began to notice small things. First, the monthly meetings that I used to be part of suddenly didn't include me. Then, the budgets I used to approve went straight to Greg, a guy who had only been at the company for 2 years. It was like I was slowly being erased, piece by piece. My name wasn't on the big client proposals anymore, and I wasn't invited to strategy planning sessions either. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe it was just a shift in roles. But deep down, I knew something was off. So I started writing everything down. Every meeting I was excluded from, every project passed over, every strange interaction with my boss, Kelly. Then came the whispered conversations that would suddenly stop when I entered the break room. The glances between Kelly and the younger hires. I could tell they were grooming someone to replace me. And I wasn't going to let them win. I started preparing. I consulted a lawyer who specialized in employment law. He advised me to gather proof, stay professional, and be patient. So I did. I downloaded every email, saved every document, and even set up a cloud folder that only I could access. Every paper trail was stored there. But more than that, I began building my backup plan. I reached out to my old contacts from college, from previous jobs. I let them know I might be open to new opportunities. I spent weekends working on a business idea I had shelved years ago, a consulting firm for small local businesses. I didn't want to be dependent on anyone again. One night, after a particularly brutal day at work where Kelly had publicly scolded me over something that wasn't even my fault, I went home and looked at myself in the mirror. This ends on your terms, not theirs, I told my reflection. That was when I started preparing my resignation letter. Not to use right away, but just to feel like I had some control. But then, the most unexpected thing happened. My grandmother, who had been battling health issues, passed away. It broke my heart. She was one of my biggest supporters, always telling me, "You don't work that hard for someone else to throw you away." I took a week off to attend her funeral and help with her affairs. When I returned, things at work had shifted even more. Greg was sitting at my desk. I remember stopping in the hallway, staring at the sight like I was seeing a stranger in my home. He looked up, smiled awkwardly, and said, "Oh, hey. Kelly asked me to just handle things while you were gone." Handle things? My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. I walked straight to Kelly's office. She smiled, that same tight smile she always wore when she was about to say something fake nice. "Oh, you're back. We were just discussing a few changes." "Like giving my desk to someone else?" I asked calmly. "Temporary," she said, waving her hand. "Just until things stabilize." I nodded, but inside, I knew. This was no longer a maybe. They were getting rid of me. And it was only a matter of time. So I stayed quiet. I went back to the desk they gave me, a tiny corner spot near the copy machine. I smiled, I did my work, and I continued collecting everything. That brings us back to the day of the firing. I saw it coming when HR asked to meet me that morning. I walked in, sat down, and heard the words I had mentally prepared for. "We've decided to go in a different direction." I nodded, accepted the envelope, and walked out. But they didn't know I had already filed a formal complaint with the Labour Board 3 weeks earlier, complete with documentation of age discrimination, professional sabotage, and unlawful demotion. They didn't know I had spoken to a journalist friend about workplace mistreatment in modern offices. And they sure didn't know what I planned to do next. As I stepped into the elevator, phone buzzing with texts from co-workers asking what happened, I smiled for the first time in months. Because they thought they were closing a door. They had no idea what door I was about to open. And that door was about to slam right back in their faces. I hadn't just been preparing. I had been building something. Something they were going to regret messing with. But just when I thought I was the one in control, something happened that I didn't see coming. I got home, turned on the news, and there it was. The company I just left, they were under federal investigation. I dropped my bag. My mouth opened, and my phone started ringing. The next morning, I walked into work like nothing had happened, smiling at the receptionist, nodding at co-workers. Inside, I was boiling, but on the outside, I was calm. If this was a war, I had to play it smart. I needed time. I needed evidence. And I needed allies. That very afternoon, I started collecting things. Emails, files, even small conversations I remembered. I reached out to HR anonymously using a friend's device and started asking questions about company layoffs, severance policies, and who approved them. I also called my lawyer and asked him to prepare something quietly. He told me, document everything, especially anything that feels off. A few days later, I noticed something weird. An intern, just hired 2 weeks ago, was suddenly getting access to files I'd handled for years. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But when I checked deeper, I saw my name had been quietly removed from multiple projects. No one told me. No one said a word. It was like I was being erased slowly, bit by bit. I confided in Marissa, one of the only co-workers I fully trusted. We'd worked side by side for years, and she knew how much I'd given to this company. Her face turned pale when I told her about the intern and the files. "Sarah, they're setting you up," she whispered. "I overheard a meeting last Friday. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was dropping off some folders. Your name came up. A lot." My heart sank. "What did they say?" "They're moving you out. Quietly. They don't want a scene. They said they can't afford your position anymore and that you were resisting change." I sat there stunned. 15 years, and now they wanted me gone like yesterday's news? And they were replacing me with someone new, someone cheap? But then Marissa leaned closer. "I think I know why they're rushing this. Something big is about to happen. I don't know what it is, but there's pressure from upstairs." I had no idea what she meant. But if something bigger was going on, maybe this wasn't just about me. Maybe this was about protecting something, or someone. That night, I went home and opened my old laptop. I didn't use my company one because I didn't trust them anymore. I started piecing everything together. I even drove to the local print shop and made hard copies of key emails. I wasn't going to let them delete my legacy. Not without a fight. Then, 2 days later, I walked into the office and my keycard didn't work. Security looked at me strangely and asked me to wait in the lobby. I felt my stomach twist. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. 10 minutes later, my boss, Steve, came down. He had that fake smile he always used when giving bad news. "Sarah, can I speak to you in my office?" I followed him silently. My heart was racing, but I kept my face calm. Once we were inside, he closed the door. "We've decided to move in a different direction," he said, like he'd practiced the line 100 times. I stayed quiet. "You've been a great part of the team, but things are changing. We're restructuring. It's not personal." But it was personal. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a termination letter. No warning. No explanation. No severance. I looked up at him. "I knew this was coming, Steve. But you have no idea what I've been preparing." His smug look dropped just slightly. Just enough for me to notice. He had no idea what was coming next. Not a clue. The next morning, I sat at my small kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee, looking at the stack of documents spread out in front of me. My plan was taking shape. For years, I had been saving every little detail, every shady deal, every toxic HR report ignored, every email that hinted at illegal practices. At first, I just kept them to protect myself. But now, I realized what I had was powerful. Maybe even unstoppable. I wasn't going to do something petty like slash tires or post angry reviews. No. I was going to let the truth do the talking. First, I made copies of everything. Then I contacted a former colleague, Amanda. She had worked in the finance department but left 2 years ago after accusing Mark, the regional manager, of falsifying budgets. No one believed her. She was painted as disgruntled and blacklisted in the industry. When I told her what I had, she asked to meet that afternoon. We sat down at a quiet cafe, and I laid everything out. Her eyes widened. "I knew it," she whispered, flipping through the papers. "This proves everything they said about me was a lie." "I want justice," I said. "For me. For you. For everyone they stomped on." Amanda agreed to help. She still had contacts in local media and had even befriended an investigator after her case fell apart. She made some calls. Things were moving quickly, but I had to be careful. I couldn't let my former boss, Greg, or Mark know what I was up to yet. I still remembered the way Greg had looked me in the eye that last day, pretending to feel bad while handing me my dismissal letter. I used a new email, bought a burner phone, and didn't tell anyone else what I was doing. I wanted no loose ends. 1 week later, Amanda's investigator friend, David, met with us at a small office she rented for her freelance work. He was tall, quiet, and moved like someone who had spent too many years in law enforcement. After looking through my files, he nodded slowly. "This is more than just shady HR behavior," I said. "If what you're saying is true, there could be criminal charges." I felt a mix of excitement and fear. Will they go to jail? That depends. But someone's going to be in a world of trouble. He told us to sit tight while he started cross-referencing my documents with public records and corporate filings. Meanwhile, Amanda worked on an anonymous tip package for a major local news station. The storm was forming. It was only a matter of time before it hit. A few days later, I was walking through the grocery store when I saw something that froze me in place. There, on the front page of the town's biggest newspaper, was a headline. "Whistleblower accuses local corporation of fraud, discrimination, and retaliation." My heart started pounding. I picked up a copy and flipped to the story. It was full of vague details, but they all matched mine. It quoted a former long-time employee and sources close to the finance team. Amanda had done it. She had shared the story. My story. I stood there for a long moment, realizing what I had done was no longer private. This was real now. The article didn't name names, but I knew Greg and Mark would know exactly who it was about. I expected a phone call, a threat, something. But all I got was silence. And then, 4 days later, David called me. "They've launched an internal audit," he said. "And Mark? He just booked a one-way flight to Florida. Left in the middle of the night." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means they're scared. Real scared." I could feel my lips curl into a smile. But just when I thought things were finally swinging my way, something happened that made my stomach drop. I came home from running errands and found my front door slightly open. I knew I'd locked it. I always did. Inside, nothing looked stolen, but on my kitchen counter was a single manila envelope. No name. No return address. Just a sticky note on top. "You should stop." I stared at the envelope for a long time, my fingers frozen inches away from it. My brain raced with questions. Who had been in my house? How did they get in? And more importantly, how did they know what I was doing? With shaky hands, I opened the envelope. Inside were printed copies of emails. My emails. Some from years ago, and some as recent as the anonymous tip sent to the news station. Every page had a red underline or highlight across the text, like someone was trying to show me what they had access to. They'd been watching. My stomach turned. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, lights off, TV off, just staring at the front door, wondering if they'd come back. I had thought I was in control. But this was a warning. A threat. I wasn't just poking the bear. I had woken it up. The next morning, I called Amanda and told her what happened. Someone broke in and left me a threat, I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm. They left emails. My emails. How would they even have those? Her voice was tense. You need to report it to the police. Right now. I did. A quiet officer named Officer Larson came over, took photos, fingerprinted the envelope, and wrote down everything I said. He asked if I had any enemies. Yeah, I replied. And they all wear suits. He didn't smile. Do you have any security cameras? He asked. No. I never needed them, I said. Now you do. That same day, I had cameras installed around the house and replaced all my locks. I even changed the passwords to every account I had. But it didn't take away the feeling of being watched. Despite the fear, I pushed forward. Amanda did too. We weren't backing down. The story had gotten attention. A second article had come out, now naming the company. Still no names, but everyone who read it could probably guess. I even saw posts online from former employees backing up the story. David told us that the internal audit had already turned up inconsistencies in 3 years of financial reports. The corporate lawyers were scrambling. One of the board members had even resigned. It should have felt like a win. But a few nights later, I came home to find my car keyed down both sides. Every tire had been slashed. And under the windshield wiper was another envelope. This time, it read, "Final warning." The police came again. But there was no camera footage, no witnesses, nothing. Officer Larson looked more concerned this time. You may want to consider staying somewhere else for a few days, he said. I didn't have many options. My sister, Beth, offered her guest room. I packed a bag and left that night, feeling like a fugitive in my own life. But I wasn't going to give in. If anything, I felt more determined. At Beth's, I finally got a little sleep. In the morning, I logged into my new email and found a message from someone I didn't recognize. No name, no subject, just a single line of text. You're not the only one with secrets. Attached was a photo. It was me, sitting in the cafe with Amanda, taken from a distance. Someone was following me. I sent it to David, who told me to stop all contact for now. Lay low. Let me take care of it. But I couldn't sit still. I needed answers. I needed to know who was behind this. So I did something reckless. I drove to the old office building, the place I had worked for 15 years. I sat in the parking lot in a borrowed car, watching employees come and go. After an hour, I saw him, Greg, my old boss. He walked out, holding a coffee, talking on the phone. He looked nervous, pale. He wasn't the confident jerk I remembered. He looked like someone who was drowning. And then, I saw something even more surprising. Behind him, walking briskly out of the building, was Mark. But he wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits followed him closely, one holding a folder, the other holding a badge. The FBI. I blinked, barely believing what I saw. Mark got into a black car, flanked by the agents, and the car drove off. I sat there in shock. What had just happened? Were they arresting him? Questioning him? I reached for my phone to call Amanda. But before I could, I noticed someone walking toward my car. A woman. Late 30s. Business casual clothes. I didn't recognize her, but she had a badge clipped to her belt. She tapped on the window. Mr. Carter, she asked. I nodded slowly. She held up her badge. I'm Agent Reynolds. We need to talk. Agent Reynolds sat across from me at a small coffee shop a few blocks from the office building. She had a folder in front of her, but she hadn't opened it yet. Her eyes were focused on me like she already knew more than she was letting on. Mr. Carter, she began, her voice calm. We've been investigating your former employer for quite some time. Embezzlement, fraud, and possible collusion with overseas accounts. But the information you and Ms. Hall provided helped accelerate the case. I blinked, barely believing it. So, you knew? She nodded. Yes. But we didn't know where the leak was coming from. Your anonymous tips gave us the breadcrumbs we needed. Once the second article hit, the board started to turn on each other. That's why you're in danger. I sat back, still processing everything. So what now? Do I need to go into hiding? Reynolds smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. No. But we'd advise you to stay cautious. And if anyone else contacts you, let us know immediately. We believe some of them may still try to retaliate before everything comes out in court. That night, I called Amanda. They're closing in. They know everything, I told her. She was quiet for a moment. Does it feel like justice yet? I looked out at the city from my sister's guest room window. Not yet. But it's getting close. The next few weeks moved fast. Mark, Greg, and 2 other top executives were arrested. News broke nationwide. The company's stock plummeted. Shareholders sued. Former employees spoke out. The story was everywhere. I watched it unfold on TV like it was someone else's life. And through it all, not once did they realize I'd been 5 steps ahead. You see, before I left the company, I didn't just download copies of shady financial records. I also backed up call logs, text messages, and internal communications. I knew how paranoid they were, and I knew they'd eventually slip. The anonymous email? That was mine. The tip to the news? Also me. Even the lawyer who started the audit? I gave him his first lead through a secure channel. And yet, they still thought I was just a bitter employee. They never imagined I would outsmart them. The day I got fired, they laughed. Thought they'd buried me. But now I was the reason the entire empire came crashing down. Amanda and I started a non-profit using the money from a settlement I got once the company folded. It helped protect whistleblowers in corporate America, giving them legal tools, safety nets, and connections to journalists. We called it the Lighthouse, because every dark system needs someone shining a light. Months later, I stood outside the courthouse where Greg and Mark were being sentenced. Reporters crowded around, but I stayed at a distance. Watching. Remembering. Beth stood beside me. So, was it worth it? She asked. I nodded. Every second. Because after 15 years of giving everything to a company that discarded me, I proved one thing. They dismissed me like I was nothing. But I already knew what was coming. And they had no idea. Revenge served cold. Power flipped. Justice delivered. Subscribe to our channel for more amazing revenge stories.